Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the book of Daniel. We're continuing to look at Daniel chapter 9. We're looking at the latter part of the chapter that deals with Daniel's third vision, the vision of the 70 sevens. We've already seen in the last couple of days that the 77s, or the 70 weeks of years, refers to that period of time following the decree that the Jews can return from exile and restore Jerusalem. 69 of those weeks passed until the coming of the Messiah, the Anointed One, who will make atonement for sins by the sacrifice of himself. This is all rather clear in the vision. So we're spanning that time from around 538 BC, when Cyrus the Persian king issued the decree the Jews could return to Jerusalem, until the coming of the Messiah, the coming of Jesus. But now in these 70 weeks, we've already seen they're divided into three parts. The first seven for 7 weeks, and then 62 weeks of years, and then the final one, which seems to be set apart from the others. Now let's look at the latter part of this vision that Daniel had. We're beginning to read at verse 26. Now after the 62 sevens, the Anointed One, the Messiah, will be put to death and will have nothing. So this is reference to the sacrificial death of Jesus on the cross. The people of the ruler who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. This is someone else who comes with destruction. The end will come like a flood. War will continue until the end, and desolations have been decreed. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. That's that final 7. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. And at the temple, he will set up an abomination that causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured out upon him. So this final week of 7, final period of 7 years, seems to be a time when a ruler will arise who will persecute the people of God, who will attempt to destroy the city and the sanctuary. Now, once again, we see the little horn. This is a reference to the little horn. Now, it doesn't mention the phrase little horn here, but it obviously is referring to the little horn that we've already seen twice before in chapter 7 and in chapter 8. In both of those instances, it talked about the little horn being a ruler who would change the laws of God, attempt to abolish the worship of God, and would persecute the holy people, trying to destroy the people of God. Here we have a ruler in this last 7 who attacks the city and the sanctuary. He also sets up an abomination that causes desolation. Now this was referred to in chapter 8 in reference to the little horn. Also notice it says in the middle of the 7, he will begin his persecution. He'll make a covenant with the people of God, but in the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. That's when he sets up the abomination that causes desolation. Now, I mention that because early on in chapter 7, when it talked about the little horn, it talked about a period of time, times, and half a time. It seems to be 3.5 years. Here it talks about in the middle of the 7, he sets up the abomination of desolation, begins the persecution. That leaves 3.5 years of that 7 for the persecution to occur. So this links all these together. Now, I've already seen that the little horn is a reference to Antichrist. Now, in chapter 8, it's a reference to the Antichrist of the Old Testament, that Antiochus Epiphanes, who in the year 167 BC attempted to destroy the Jewish people. In chapter 7, and now again in chapter 9, it seems to refer to the Antichrist to come toward the end of time, who will replicate much of what Antiochus had done in 167. So as we said before, the Antichrist arose, the spirit of Antichrist in the Old Testament, in that manifestation of Antiochus Epiphanes in 167 BC. But we're going to see the same kind of evil toward the end of time when another type of Antichrist will arise. And he also will practice persecution against the church. As I said, this little horn, this spirit of Antichrist, has already been mentioned 3 times. Now, it mentions he sets up the abomination of desolation. That is mentioned 4 times in the book of Daniel. So it's obviously an important aspect. So tomorrow we'll talk about what that means and what it says to us in this prophetic word. So I hope you join us next time for our 5-minute Bible study in the book of Daniel.